Okay, can you hear me? Just double check on the AV persons.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, very good. Thank you for confirming that. Welcome everybody to the January 3rd edition of our Technical Advisory Committee meeting. Thank everybody for being here in person today. I know it's some people are still carrying over from the holidays as I was, so I appreciate everybody that's able to get here in person. I'd like to remind everybody that they should be wearing a mask throughout the meeting, so please partake in that. And also, just general housekeeping, if we have a motion or you want to make comments, please announce your name prior to making the motion, so we can help out with the recorder on the meeting sense. So with that,
She's actually going to do the roll call for us.
Okay.
So Gail, if you want to do the roll call, it'd be really great.
Jeff Sims,
Here.
Mike Williams,
Here.
Brian McCarthy, Troy Tinch, Jonathan Scott,
Here.
Gail, I'm sorry to
Brian.
interrupt you. I just want you to know that they're not yet confirmed by the TPO board, so we don't need to mark them as, unexcused or something.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Brian Pissarro,
Here.
Matthew Pleasant,
The school district no longer has a seat on the TAC. I'll have to give you an updated roll call list, but continue.
got it, thank you. Michael English,
Present.
Anna Quinones,
Hi, I'm present.
Gina Evans,
Yes.
Leland Dicus, John Patrick, Julie Ham,
Mark Hudson for Julianne.
thank you. Danny Jorgensen, Margaret Kuplinis, I'm sorry,
Margaret Kublins for Danny Jorgensen.
thank you. Jay Collins,
Present.
Melissa Leinhardt, Jennifer Malone,
Jennifer Malone, present.
Nicole Sutton, Griselle Cisneros.
Nicole called in an absence today, and then they'll have a new person that will be the alternate after the next TPO board meeting.
Okay, great. I do need to let you know that an in-person quorum has been met. The members are participating virtually because of medical reasons and the local declaration of emergency.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So next up is the,
They weren't ready. The clerk did not have minutes ready.
okay, well,
They'll be delayed to the next one.
okay, yeah, I didn't notice them in the original packet. So the minutes, which we normally would be reviewing and approving, were not prepared or in a form for final form, so we'll be doing those next month. Just to make sure, initially we look for public comment. There's nobody here live. Do we have anybody virtually from the public that wish to speak? Give another couple seconds. If you can't be heard, you can type in something in the chat indicating you wanted to speak. Okay, hearing or seeing none. I assume there's no public comment, so we will move on to the action items. And the first item up is the safe access to parks.
Good afternoon. If Greg or somebody would give me presentation control. I'm not seeing the. Oh, there. Yay, there it is. All right. Okay, if you guys would confirm which screen you're seeing. Are you seeing my presentation?
We see it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Hello, Happy New Year 2022. Lisa Silva, TPO staff. I'm the project manager of the newly named Safe Access to Parks study. I'll get into that in a little bit. So just a quick reminder that, as you know, we adopted Vision Zero in 2017, followed by the Speed Management Action Plan in 2019. The Park Speed Zone project was just one of the many implementation steps to help us prioritize lower speeds, implement engineering countermeasures. With us killing over 200 people per year on our roadways, this is very important for us to get towards zero. Okay, so when you guys generate plan and study ideas, when we come out with our UPWP requests, our Unified Work Program requests, this was one of those projects that got recommended. We kicked off the project in March with a stakeholder meeting to review the park selection process, to give feedback on the finalist park locations. September, we met with all the committees to share our preliminary existing conditions assessment and progress on the public outreach. We also heard feedback related to the project name. Thus, we have since rebranded it to the Safe Access to Parks. In the fall, we also completed a countermeasure toolbox and then applied those strategies in the toolbox to each of the study locations to give it a more user-friendly name. We're calling them fix-it ideas. Today, I'm going to quickly cover the first 4 steps of the project to give us a refresher. Not only do we need one after the holiday, but you know, September was quite a while ago. But I'm going to go very quickly through that part and then slow down and spend the bulk of the time discussing the fix-it ideas that we developed for each of the park locations. Just trying to remind you that I'm going to cover 3 parks very quickly, but all of the documents that I'm referencing today are on our TPO website, so planhillsboro.org and then /park-study. So we kicked it off, the park selection, with a very data intensive analysis. We considered a wide range of factors, especially equity and safety. We did 40% safety, 40% equity, and then 20% to the miscellaneous other things. The goal was to select 3 different and unique types of parks that were in different contexts of the county, so suburban and rural and urban. The scope called for 3, but we actually kind of got 5 because there were a couple of parks adjacent that the consultant threw in the analysis for us. So the final parks were Sulphur Springs, River Tower Park combo, Copeland Park, and the Upper Tampa Bay Trail. So the Upper Tampa Bay Trail was our linear park. Sulphur Springs is a local park, and Copeland is a regional active park. We conducted existing transportation conditions assessment for each area around the city parks, and we looked at other studies that have been conducted for the area. So, you know, Fowler in the case of Copeland, Sheldon Road Vision Zero Corridor in the case of Upper Tampa Bay Trail. We also looked at best practices nationally for safe route studies. We created a web map with all of the data that was posted on our website, still is, if you want to take a peek. So here are some of the key findings in the Copeland Park area. They'll provide a refresher of the existing conditions. So people who visit Copeland Park primarily come from a 3-mile radius. This is some really cool mobile phone data that helped us determine that destination origin information. There are inconsistent and uncomfortable pedestrian facilities connecting the park. Even the park's entrances aren't designed to consider anything other than the vehicular mode. And there are no designated bicycle facilities that connect to the park. Sulphur Springs was very similar, except that you can see the concentration is more in a 1-mile radius. And similarly, there's inconsistent pedestrian facilities and no designated bicycle facilities. Not too unsurprising, Upper Tampa Bay Trail is a regional destination. It has very little non-motorized connections. Most of the trailheads are designed for vehicular access, not bicycle and pedestrian. And that's how you can see the scattering. It's more regional connections and more vehicular. So then we went out and we're like, oh, it's COVID. Let's get creative with our outreach. So we developed these yard signs, and they were posted all around the 3 parks and up and down the trail. They were also turned into flyers and posted at adjacent transit stops and distributed electronically to the homeowners associations in the area, the Americans with Disabilities e-links, our newsletters, our social media, etc. And then want to thank each of the committees when we came to you And we provided you the flyer, and thank you for your assistance in distribution. So, whoops, where'd my PowerPoint go? Okay, sorry, gotta look click happy. All right. Page up. Okay. Are you good? Okay.
We're seeing it now, Lisa.
Okay. Look what happened. Okay, there we go. Task 3, public feedback. So we online feedback was solicited to the only multiple ways, including an online mapping tool and surveys. So that flyer directed them to the online mapping tool and to a series of questions. So if someone had, a preference to answer a survey in kind of the old-fashioned way, or they wanted to get like fancy and techie and upload photos and comments, we gave them an array of things. And then the questions helped prompt us to get some of the information that we needed out of them. Oh man. Okay. All right. So here's a summary of the feedback from Copeland Park. There were 50 comments received. 44% were related to people speeding. 21% were related to that inadequate pedestrian infrastructure I mentioned. 10% was inadequate lighting. Frequency of transit being insufficient, inadequate bike infrastructure, and other issues were less than 10 of the comments. On Sulphur Springs, we had 25 comments. 16% were related to people speeding. 40% were for inadequate infrastructure, pedestrian, and 16 to lighting. Frequency of transit, what it being insufficient was 8%. Inadequate bike infrastructure was 16%, and the other issues were 4%. Here's an example of Sulphur Springs that we had the lowest number of comments, but many of them included these great pictures to help illustrate their feedback. So I like to say pictures worth 1,000 words. So this was pretty cool technique that we had inside our outreach. So for Upper Tampa Bay Trail, we had 29 comments received through the web map. 14% were related to speeding, 10% pedestrian infrastructure, 14% for lighting, and the inadequate bike infrastructure was a whopping 52%, and then the other issues were 7%. This is an illustration and sample of the feedback of some of the comments through the survey tool. There were over 90 people who participated in that technique. Then between the two, the map and the survey tool, we had over 200 responses. One person didn't want to participate that way, so they called their input in and we inputted it for her. So some of the questions were like, how do you typically get to the park or trail? Of the 88 that responded across all the parks, 17% walk, 42% bicycle, and 38% drive a car. Then we asked like how easy or difficult it is for you to get to and from the park, 0 being the hardest and 10 being the easiest. 81% answered, and the overall score was 6.7. So I won't I won't go into all of the questions. Let's see, hit one more. Like, does the behavior of people driving, like speeding or not paying attention, make you not walk or bike to the trail? Of the 72 that responded, 40% said yes. So this is all, again, posted on our website if you want to get into the details and specifics of that. Then we also complemented our outreach with an in-person public engagement. We did it outside of each of the things with easels and maps to comment on. We kind of timed it before those big surges, so that was very fortuitous. We talked to over 20 people at each park location. Overwhelmingly, the feedback was positive. Each park had its own unique challenges in getting people to provide their feedback. At Copeland, it's very large and very diverse park, so we set people walking around all over, including a native Spanish speaker. At Upper Tampa Bay Trail, it's very long and linear, so we set out on our bikes and handed out flyers to entice people to come over and provide their feedback at the map. And at Sulphur Springs, we managed to get all of the lifeguards and law enforcement in the area to provide their insights. Overall, it was really great, and we generated many new ideas that were not evident even in our multiple park visits. So the toolbox that I mentioned earlier, we developed the safety manner toolbox that included approximately 90 countermeasures in 6 different categories. While many of them have speed reduction component, many are cross-cutting cutting strategies with multiple safety benefits, and hence the name change to not just focus on speed management was very appropriate. The toolbox was applied to each park location. Preliminary fix-it ideas were developed. When we took the ideas out to the community to ask for each location was given red and green dots to note their ideas, and then post-its for all new ideas. Across the 3 park locations, no red dot was placed. So we got lots and lots of green positive dots. We will go into each one a little bit more detailed in a bit, and we really need your help to see if there's anything we missed or we may have thought up after we've done all of our analysis. All right, for Copeland, we had 21 fix-it ideas. 9 of them were general and 12 were location specific. 2 were in our bikeway facilities ideas, 5 in intersection and roadway design, 12 in walking facilities, and 2 in other around Parkland. Most of the ideas fell into the walking category, which includes items like implementing traffic calming, reducing crossing distances at intersections, and adding more marked and controlled crosswalks. These maps are a little difficult to see in a PowerPoint presentation. They're not only in the final reports that I mentioned, but we have them listed individually on the website. So you can print them out in large maps like we had at the parks if you'd like. Here are some of the results from Sulphur Springs. As you can see, people provided a lot of great feedback with their little pink post-its there, and they supported a lot of the ideas that we had generated previously. For Sulphur Springs, we had 21 fix-it ideas, including 9 general ideas and 12 location specific. Most of the ideas fell again in the walking category, and these kind of relate back to those survey comments that you heard me reference earlier, which includes more sidewalks, better connections to the River Tower Park, raised crosswalks, relocation of transit stops, improved circulation for people walking and biking through the interchange, and better connections and transit-oriented development ideas along Bird Street. For Tampa Bay Trail, we took 2 boards and broke it in because it's long and has a lot of ideas. So here's feedback on the southern portion. And then overall, we had 28 fix-it ideas, 8 of them general and 12 location specific. 8 were bicycle related, 3 intersection, 6 walking, 2 signals, and then 3 striping and signing, and then 6 in the other. Most of the ideas fell in the bicycle category, which includes completing the 2-mile gap to the north, widening some portions of the trail that are narrow, evaluating and upgrading bicycle facilities that are on the roadways connecting to the trail. Other ideas were enhanced crossings, wayfinding, and implementing speed limits in and around the trail. Okay, that was a lot. As a result of the feedback we received, we did change the name, as I mentioned. Much of the specific feedback collected during the initial stage was incorporated into our final fix-it ideas. We have a summary of how we've noted those and responded to them. And then our final document for this study is a how-to guide, because these are 3 of 400 parks, and we have done a variety of contexts and types of parks, all in order to try to have a how-to guide to apply it to the remaining parks and give it to our implementing jurisdictions. So a how-to guide is the final deliverable that you'll find. So that concludes my summary of the safe access to parks. If you've got any edits, let me know. Otherwise, the action today is to recommend approval to the TPO board. It's scheduled for their February meeting.
Sorry, I didn't know if somebody else had a comment. Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. Certainly very detailed. Appreciate that. So do we have any comments from the committee? Virtual or in person? Yes.
Margaret Copeland. So with this, with your next steps and the projects, we have the ideas. Were those recommendations You go back to like maybe just one slide.
That's good.
Like, here's an example of the Upper Tampa Bay Fix-It ideas.
Perfect. Okay, so from that, these recommendations or fix-it ideas would be presented in this document. And then that would be like the closure of this document, and then we would start looking at creating projects and considerations for implementation. Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and many of the stakeholders that participated in the development along the way have given feedback on the various draft fix-it ideas or suggested others that were included. So yes, this could get handed over to City of Tampa's, mobility department to then start folding in as possible to other projects. And or Parks Department, same thing, they participated. So some of this may be something that the Parks Department can then program, like the expansion of the trail width, where it was too narrow, et cetera, and the signage replacement.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I guess for me, as kind of a follow-up to that, is there somebody that kind of oversees when there's a series of plans for a particular park, let's say, and like, who would be the ultimate governing body to say, hey, let's get all these ones done, or these aren't going to be done, or whatever?
Thanks.
Well, good question. Had somebody else mention monitoring in another committee. Many of the off-facility things, I would imagine a mobility or public works and community and infrastructure department folding in. We do have different jurisdictions. 2 of the parks fell in the City of Tampa, 1 in unincorporated county in the top 3. That's just how it ended up falling in the ranking. But one of those documents we produced in task 1 was a prioritization of all 440 parks. So, it's presumably you could start working on 4, 5, and 6, and, depending on the jurisdiction. I kind of see this as a little bit like the school safety study. There was multiple jurisdictions with on-site and off-site improvements. So the on-site ones were given to the school district. The on-site ones in this case will be given to the Parks and Recreation departments. So the documents are provided for each jurisdiction. I don't know which department would take the lead, probably just because we're transportation folks. I'm imagining the transportation departments. But there's nothing to say that parks departments can't take the lead. It's up to the jurisdiction.
Okay, yeah, that would just be one of my concerns is that, I've seen these projects, and I think it's great that there's multiple agencies collaborating. That's
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when nobody kind of holds persons accountable, some groups can kind of fall out and think, some of the other groups going to take care of their stuff, and that's good enough. So I don't know if maybe, down the line as a thought is some kind of reassessment at a certain timeline where it's evaluated and what progress was made and what still needs to be done may not be a bad idea.
Right.
Again, falls under who really should take the lead. That's a hard one to answer because it could change depending on, some factors, certain parks may call for a lot of transportation improvements, whereas another park, it might be a lot of infrastructure improvements. So it's very, but I think it's, again, I don't want to sound negative at all. I don't mean to. I think it's great that the collaboration and an assessment. Certainly a big job if the plan is to ultimately look at all 400 plus parks. But because it seemed like this was pretty intensive. But hopefully this is a template, so future parks are a little bit easier now to look based on all this. So.
Definitely, and that's what's envisioned here in this how-to guide. And you do see here the last bullet is monitor outcomes and help identify potential funding sources. We never kind of let go of our projects entirely. I'm sure the TPO will assist, and we're really great about reminding our jurisdictions when we go out shopping for tech projects or further feasibility projects in our UPWP. We want to see our work then utilized and leveraged to the maximum extent possible. So I'm sure we'll be a fearful, keeper of the study alive and well as well. And then one thing that, especially in this grant season that we find ourselves in, it's the results of these 3 studies are like 80% ready for proposing for a grant. So, grant coordinators might, help shepherd some of this stuff as well. But yeah, Thanks for the comment. I'll make sure we flush that out a little bit more before our final.
Yes, another comment?
Margaret Kubelitz again. So as we move forward with using all the tools across agencies, if like these ideas are mapped in GIS and maybe it's a layer, then and it's shared, whenever we have a project that comes up, whether it's water, wastewater, stormwater, or a transportation project, it may be an opportunity for us to pick it up and the project.
Yeah, good idea. I'll make sure when we send the final study out and post it, the GIS layers got brought up before as well. And so I confirmed that we will have those. So we'll make sure we provide those in a packet that we send to the local jurisdictions.
We're ultimately trying to do that. We're trying to get to where we can always reference, whether it's a DOT, county, or city project. How do you capture everything? So,
Yeah,
right,
that's good. Yeah, good comment. And I'm scoping for a second school study, so I'm going to make sure I put that in there. Provide the GIS layers to final product.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do we have any other comments, virtual or in person? Okay, I don't hear any. So with that, I think, we need a motion. So this was a motion to, make sure I get the wording right here.
Recommend approval to the TPO board.
So they're looking for a motion to recommend approval. Do we have a motion?
So Jay Collins, motion to approve the safe access to parks pilot study to the TPO board for recommendation.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Jonathan Scott, second.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Just as a reminder, we're hearing a little bit of feedback from somebody that might not have their virtual connection muted when they intended to. So just everybody online, double check that you're muted if you intended to be muted. Okay, I think with that, thank you, Lisa. We are ready to move on to the next action item, which is our very own Gina Torres here with the request for an additional seat.
Yes, thank you. You'll see in your write-up that we did have a request from Sulphur County to add another seat to the TAC committee. And we discussed it internally. I did talk to Jeff about it. And it really doesn't seem like a bad idea at all because they have created a new department. It's the Community and Infrastructure Planning Department. And it just seems like a really a different set of eyes and ideas could come from that group. Not that Mike isn't, providing us all the input we need, but I mean, his view is, what department are you? You're in development services. And we also have John Patrick or Leland when they do attend their, capital program.
Well, John Patrick is division director for this division that you're talking about.
For the new one.
The new one.
Right, okay, well, he was the one that suggested this, and I think that makes sense. Sarah actually came by, they're on this floor, that department, and I will speak for you to say that you seem pretty interested and maybe even excited about joining the TAC. I guess the only other, concern, the county does have a larger population than like having Central Terrace and Plant City and even the city of Tampa. So having an additional person kind of makes sense, but I don't think that that's as significant as it is just the knowledge and the background that you can provide us. We've never really, since I've seen any of this committee, ever have like a conflict or controversy between a city, decision being made here or county. It just doesn't happen, and I can't see a coup of the TAC committee of the county taking over. It's not really that big of a concern to Beth or Rich or I and Jeff. We talked about this. So I included what the change would be to the bylaws, which goes through a couple different series before the TPO board. So this wouldn't become even finalized until the March TAC meeting because it has to go through 2 readings to the TPO board. But, if there's any concerns, please, let's talk about it now. If you have questions of Sarah, who maybe won't always be the person, but hopefully for a really long time, you would be assigned, just that you can ask her, put you on the spot there. But are there any concerns or opposition or support? What do you guys think?
Okay, with that, I think we'll open it for comments. I'll start off just, as a member of the committee. Gina, you asked for our input just as the chair to see if our agency had any concern. We endorsed it. So fortunately, our agency is on board with it. I've been doing this for 6 years, I think, or at the time, and I agree we don't typically have conflicts, and I'm very appreciative that everybody seems to get along. We did kind of raise the concern, not a concern, but just, a discussion topic that this is another Hillsborough County agency representative, and, the dynamics of this committee are diverse, and I think it's great. We have, Aviation Authority and Health Department and Environmental and, but then a lot of other planning and transportation. So there was just the question of, well, is this creating, like almost a block of Hillsborough County, which I totally don't think is the case, but it was just a mention. So it could be, and our comment was, we're totally on board with it. We want to make sure there's an open discussion so nobody can feel like that was hidden if they had that concern too. So if anybody thought of that as a reason to be concerned, certainly speak your mind now. But, again, I'm raising it to tell you we don't really have that concern, but I thought it was worthy at least to mention it. So other than that, I think it's a great addition. But, again, any other comments, certainly would welcome right now. Jay.
Let's bring our in-person quorum to 9.
Yeah.
Are we going to make a requirement that since they're right there, they're over here?
Yeah.
Just saying, just making sure. That, and then also, what for full voting, are we still odd, or are we now an even number for full voting? Not that I think it would ever happen, but still.
Yeah, that's true. It's odd.
Okay.
So do we?
Okay. And do we have any other comments or concerns?
Just a question is, so does that mean Leland will get a different backup?
Yeah.
What was this? Leland get a what?
Is Leland going to get a different backup?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
John Patrick is his backup.
Yeah, Marcelo Trevor.
Okay.
His last name. He is being added as his alternate, Leland's alternate.
Okay.
And Mike, I would propose, I want to discuss that because I didn't get a chance to discuss that with my managers. They might want to propose somebody different.
Is this Leland speaking?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Leland.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that. I can provide that information to you, Gina, probably by the end of this week.
Oh, that'd be great, because we have several others. You're not alone in this. There's several other departments that are changing things around a little bit. And we have an item going before the January 11th TPO board to confirm the alternates and the members and all that. So if you can get it to me before that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know how they want to do the timing, because if this wouldn't be effective until, what'd you say, March, I think?
Well, yes, not for the alternates, but for this.
I know, but I'm
adding
saying
this
they may
position.
not want to do the alternate change
Oh,
until this, I mean, that's up to them.
that's fine. We can have a vacant alternate.
Yeah.
We can have a vacant member too, for that matter. So that's fine if the county.
I mean, that's Sarah, that's really up to you guys. And Leland. Okay.
All right, any other comments? Okay, so with that, I guess we're looking for a motion to approve the request for an additional seat on the tag forward to the board. Can I get could you repeat yourself because there was a feedback?
Jonathan Scott, motion to.
All right, thank you. Older guy.
So someone needs to mute their microphone, please.
Okay, again, everybody online that's not actively, wanting to speak, please mute your mics. So we have a motion for Jonathan Scott. Do we have a second?
Second.
Now, Mark Hudson, thank you, Mark. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, thanks, everyone.
That's the next item.
Next item up is also Gina.
So we're at the election of officers. And the way that this goes, we just need a motion. You can nominate yourself or anybody else. There doesn't need to be a second. And then we'll take a vote on each individual position. So we have our chair, who's currently Jeff Sims, vice chair is Mike Williams, and an officer at large is Jay Collins. I just laugh because usually like, well, please take it over again. But I did talk to, were you guys okay if you are nominated again? I usually like to check and see if there's any concerns about remaining in those positions if that were happening.
Yeah, I guess so. I haven't taken any position, but I still think I can do this chair.
Okay, so let's start with chair then, or is there a nomination for chair of the TAC?
Yep, I nominate Jeff Sims to be chair again.
All right. Are there any other nominations for chair? Anybody online can speak up or type?
Yeah, no.
Well, I guess we'll take action even though there's only one nomination, but all those in favor of Jeff Sims continuing as chair of the TAC?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, great. All right, we're moving on to vice chair. Currently it's Mike Williams. Do we have a nomination for vice chair of the TAC?
This is Jay Collins. I'd like to nominate Mike Williams for vice chair.
Fantastic. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All those in favor of Mike Williams continuing as vice chair? Aye.
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 Fantastic. Doesn't sound like any opposition to that? Okay. And then for officer at large, Jay Collins is our current officer at large. Do we have a nomination for the TAC's officer at large?
I nominate Jay for officer at large.
Okay, that's Mark Hudson. Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor of Jay Collins being officer at large or remaining? Officer at
Aye.
large? Fantastic. Okay, well, the same slate of officers shall move forward this year. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yay.
Folks coming down.
The next item and my last for speaking to you today is attendance review and declaration of vacant seats. It got a little confusing as I was looking through the, who attended all this past year and then who's new, because we have several new people that are coming onto the TAC committee. So the bottom line is nobody had 3 consecutive unexcused absences. So there wasn't anyone that, in particular that we would have to have removed, or could have removed from the committee. We felt we needed to. So that's good news. There were several other things that we thought that you might be interested in changing, but I kind of changed my mind on this, but we also have several vacant positions. And I didn't know if we wanted to think about removing those. And I thought it really doesn't matter because we vacated positions so they don't count towards a quorum. And they may eventually have people in these departments that show interest or want to join the TAC. And like the Florida Trucking Association, this must have happened years before, before the TAC added that seat. And there was probably somebody that was really engaged in it. I don't see why we would want to remove them unless you guys feel like that's important. But, we can reach out to some of these. That's the Florida DEP, and then we have you here as a local environmental agency. TBRPC, for a while there, we had some representation. We vacated that because they didn't have enough staff or staff that could come. And then Port Tampa, which would be a great, addition, I think, here, didn't have the staff that could commit. So I recommend that we keep them here until we find a person or they find a person that could attend. So I'm not suggesting maybe that we even change seats. If we do that, we have to update the bylaws anyway. They're already part of the bylaws. But I didn't know if you guys wanted to talk about that. And one last thing before I get off this topic, but technically we do have Temple Terrace is committed to coming now. So we've got people that have been Brian and Troy would be the member and alternate. With Tony Garcia's retirement, we have Jennifer and we also have Melissa Leinhart who will be attending and kind of formally, blessed by the TPO board at their next meeting. And then maybe Leland will let me know who he wanted. Gina might have a different alternate. And then Hart had both of their representatives had left Hart. Now Chris Cochran is going to be approved at the, should be approved at the TPO board meeting. So, and he's waiting to hire another person as his alternate. So we've got a lot of new blood coming back, into the TAC. I think it will really be good to have 4 discussions. So I think the committee looks really good to me as far as, membership. So this is just kind of like blessing, who we have on this group action item.
Okay. I mean, my comment would be, I think it's very important we get a representative from Hart, just because a lot of topics have come up where Hart's referenced, and I'm always glad to have somebody that's more specifically knowledgeable in that area.
A lot of funding goes to Hart as well. So I think it's really important to have someone from Hart. Some of the others, like the Trucking Association, not so important.
I would like, and my other one, I'd like to see somebody from the port here. If you ask me to pick one, that's the one that I think, just because they don't often get ones, but then, certain projects around that area, they're very invested in, and, I like to hear their opinions on it. And I know they presented to us before, like they presented their master plan to us, and, they take transportation into consideration on a lot of issues. But again, we can't force them to put somebody on there. I'm just saying, for me, it would be nice to have it.
So I don't know if you guys realize, but after each of our TAC meetings, I put together a report, all of us do for our different committees, that gets read at the TPO board meeting. So one of the things I would put here, and not to put the director on spot, but we do have a board, the director or their attorneys there every meeting, just that it came up, at the committee meeting, when we talked about this item, that we'd love to have a port representative. But maybe he'll think of somebody and that'll prompt him to check back with the staff. So
I'm happy to reach out to their chief of staff. We work really closely with them, and I think that now that they've got some positions settled, they had some retirements, and I think there's been some changes there. I think that their chief of staff, Clay or Matt Floyd, who is like their new John Thorrington. I think either one of them might either be good people.
That's Gina Evans, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
But that would be great.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to Clay. And I think with the Trucking Association as well, they have new leadership. They have a new CEO, an executive director for their organization. So it may just be something that they're not even aware that they have on here.
Right.
And I'm happy to get you her contact information as well.
That's great.
So I think and obviously I completely agree that I think the Hart and the port need to be the priority, but if we could get the Trucking Association, especially felt this like the supply, talks of supply chain and everything else, that it would be good. They're probably not even aware.
That'd be great. And if you don't, to just give me their contact information and I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mark.
I was just going to add, it might be useful to let them know that now there's options of attending virtually, which may make them a little bit more receptive if they know they don't have to be here in person for every meeting. That may help them with their staff.
Good idea.
Good point.
I don't know if this requires action of, I think our discussion here is really what I was looking for. Support for what we have currently, and these are great ideas. Follow up on. Thank you.
I did have one question on the, because the action and as deemed appropriate, so I think we're having a discussion. On the table, what is the WA?
You can't see the legend on there? I might not have.
The legend just has Y and N.
Okay, I must have removed that part. And it's such a small font that I really can't see. Oh, Gail, you put this together. Do you remember what you put for W?
Yes, W is virtual.
Oh,
And then the WA would be the virtual alternate.
Thank you.
okay. That makes more sense then. I got a couple W's for me and I didn't know. Okay, very good. All right, does anybody have any other comments? All right, I think we're ready to move on. So the next item up is the status report for the City of Tampa Neighborhood Commercial District Plan.
And Frank, I want to thank you for coming back from vacation today and showing up to do this presentation. I'm assuming you're there.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Give me a moment to set up my presentation here. I'm assuming that I have the ability to do so, or I've been given the authority to do so. Okay.
Who is presenting?
Frank Hall with the City of Tampa's Planning Department. Okay, one moment. Okay, can everybody see my presentation?
We see you, but I don't see a presentation yet.
Okay, let's try it again. One moment. I'm not sure why this is not working here.
Well, we do have a copy of your PowerPoint that maybe I could run if you aren't able to, but keep trying. Let me see if I can.
Okay, I will certainly try.
W for winning the web.
How about now? Any luck? How about now?
Yes,
Okay,
we can see your screen. Can you bring the PowerPoint up, please?
okay. Is that better?
Yes, yes.
Outstanding. All right, I wasn't sure which screen I was going to be on. All right, forgive me for the technical difficulties here. For those of you who do not know me, I am Frank Hall with the City of Tampa's Planning Department, and I am going to quickly go through some of the key elements of our neighborhood commercial program, commercial districts program. I'd like to again thank you for letting me speak with you today. I've worked on various corridor plans in some capacity throughout the country. And I really enjoy going into communities and meeting with residents and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work and helping them to address some of their pressing issues. So this neighborhood commercial district plan program is something that's really near and dear to my heart. Let's see if I can walk you through this. This originally started, I believe, back in September of 2019, rather. It was the city council requested that the city staff work together with the planning commission staff to develop a neighborhood commercial district plan with the hopes that some of the approaches that we developed could be used to develop additional district plans for each one of the district council district, or the council districts rather. When we started this, we did a whole lot of public engagement. The issue was we were restricted with because of COVID, and at that point we had a lot of difficulty reaching out. But for the most part, we were fairly successful. We tried on a number of different platforms. We reached out via the internet. We had a number of in-person meetings and quite a few phone conversations and telecommunication opportunities. So we did a number, we did have, all things considered, quite a bit of outreach for both projects. Both of these were two projects that begun, that were, I guess, we chose two distinct neighborhoods with different types of concerns, different demographics, but we wanted to show the breadth and width of what this project or this program could do. When we consider neighborhood commercial districts, a lot of times we're referring to something that most people would refer to as a Main Street approach. We're looking at accessibility. We're looking at opportunities for economic and social development. We're looking at scale. We're looking at safety. We're looking at a number of different elements that, for the most part, would help define a good, solid, approachable neighborhood commercial district. So when we look at these elements, we're looking at, you know, a sense of scale. We're looking at safety from a pedestrian standpoint. We're looking at comfort levels for people that are using maybe street side cafes or visiting some of the retail outlets. These are something that most people would consider fairly universal approaches towards a Main Street redevelopment. As I mentioned earlier, we looked at two different sections of the city, Palmacia area and the Main Street area in West Tampa. Both of them had issues when it came to pedestrian safety and usage of retail space, but they were completely different approaches because of their distinct demographic concerns.
Hey, Frank, this is Jeff. Can you maximize your screen to help
Sure.
us?
Let me see if I can do that for you. I'm sorry, I'm having.
It's okay.
Is that any better?
Yeah, it's a little better for sure.
Let me see if I can figure this out for you.
Gina?
It's not allowing me to change things right now.
On the bottom right-hand side, there's a little screen with an arrow.
Bottom right-hand side,
Bottom right,
right here.
to the left. To the left of that bar, right there.
All right, let's try that. All right, well, it shifted pages for me. It's not allowing me to put the project on that screen.
Oh, that's good right there for me. That's a lot better than it was.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you for that.
Okay, when we looked at this, we looked at a number of different elements, as I mentioned to you before, economic prosperity, accessibility and connectivity. Essentially, we're looking at safety and the ability for the residents to feel comfortable using this space. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus primarily on Palmacia because, again, the needs for Main Street were slightly different, but in general, we're going to look at many of the same types of concepts and concerns. When we looked at the Palmacia district, we looked at accessibility and safety for pedestrians. We focused on a lot of issues when it came to, if you look down at the lower right-hand corner there, you're looking at accessibility issues. You're looking at the narrow streets. You're looking at areas that are really, really close to what could be high speed through traffic. And so there were a lot of pedestrian safety concerns. When we look at any of our corridors from here on in, this is going to be a primary focus for us. When we set out for this to gain insight, what we did was we took a number of walking tours. I believe a few of you on the board here were with me when I took this tour. Then we also had USF students take a walking audit. They were really instrumental in helping us develop an approach for both corridors. So I'd like to, give them a shout out, so to speak. Let's see. When we reached out, again, we reached out to a number of, to the community for a number of reasons, but for our feedback, we came up with a number of issues. First off, what we wanted to address was what were the constraints and opportunities? You know, each one of these corridors had different constraints and different opportunities. But whenever we look at any of these corridors, we're going to look at the same list of potential questions, concerns, and issues. So what we do is we look at the issues and opportunities. We essentially are going to be going down a list and checking off whether or not some of these items on this list are more important than others, and then we will change them, reallocate resources in terms of the priorities and importance. And then we'll develop a strategy based on what we find. This is just an example of some of the information that we would find or we would be looking for when we look at a corridor. In this particular case, we were studying the speed of the average speed of vehicles coming through on Beta Bay, seeing that the majority of vehicle traffic for most of the day was through traffic and didn't originate in the neighborhood, so to speak. It was really important for residents for us to determine what the speeds were so that we can help residents develop a plan to address some of their concerns. If you look over to the right, you'll see a number of 3 other categories that we looked at. We were looking at pedestrian safety, we're looking at comfort, and we're looking at how are we going to improve through traffic and both vehicular and pedestrian. Here is an example of some of the work that the USF students provided to us. And for the most part, what we want to look at is on your bottom left-hand corner. We want to look at some of the key issues that were pulled out specifically. We want to look at your widths, your curb widths, your sidewalk widths, and how commuters felt, how residents felt about speeds. And then ultimately we want to touch on how the business and property owners felt that any redesign could impact them and hopefully address both positive and negative elements. This was just an example of some of the questions that we put forth when we were looking at developing an approach. And then we put some estimates together in terms of time if we were to implement some of these recommendations. These are, again, our estimations. What we've done is we've tried to, what we've done here for Palmacia, we can do in any other corridor. We've kind of separated them into 4, 5, 6. We try to go no more than a half a dozen examples for strategies, simply to keep things simple. But what we try to do is we try to pull out 5 or 6 elements and focus on them in a more detailed fashion. And here is just a closer look at some of those for those of you who have a little difficulty seeing the previous screen. One of our we had a number of recommendations, but one of our approaches is how do we take what we have, how do we augment the positives and address some of the negatives. These are examples of one of the how to address one of the concerns that we heard a lot in Palmacia. They wanted some safe pedestrian travel, and they wanted some bike routes. Up on the upper right-hand corner, you've got 2 examples. I believe one is in Dunedin, the other one is in, I believe, Tarpon Springs. But these are rail-to-trails that became really, really successful elements of the town fabric. We believe that that sort of thing can be done in areas like Palmacia, where you see on your left-hand side, rather, the CSX corridor near the Selman. And on the bottom right, you'll see examples of some proposals of how to convert some of that, I wouldn't say unused space, but more effectively use the space underneath the Selman. This is just an example of how space can be modified over time. What you see here is a section of Florida Avenue, and you can see it's not very pedestrian friendly, a lot of concrete, just not very inviting. This is the same corner with a project when it was halfway through, or rather the construction was in progress. And here you go with the same project on that same corner at its completion. You'll notice the green stripe along the street there. That's approximately the same width of the initial sidewalk. So you can see that good design really can change both the safety and aesthetic appeal of a corridor. Here we're going to touch on a few of the issues that we had on Main Street. Most of the issues that we had on Main Street were concerned about safety, personal safety more than pedestrian safety and vehicular safety. But they had similar concerns that most other corridors would have. They want to improve appearance. They want to deal with vacant lots. They want to preserve their history. West Tampa, and in particular the section of Main Street, are very, very proud of their history and where they come from, and they want to be able to ensure that any modifications that were made to the corridor were reflective of the community's character. So that was a big portion of what I did for this particular corridor, was spending a lot of time speaking with some of the residents and making sure that not only were they heard, but a lot of their recommendations were, put into the plan, and hopefully, they'll see this, some of their concepts and some of their ideas directly, come to fruition. You'll see that 47.5% of the recommendations are currently underway in one way, shape, or form. So I'm really pleased with the progress on this section of town. This is a rendering of what could be along Main Street. The key here is you'll see traffic calming elements. You'll see parking along the sides of the roads. Parking, essentially, as most of us already know, is not only is an issue, but for main streets, it offers a buffer for pedestrians from the oncoming traffic. Regardless of speed, people just feel a lot more comfortable when there's a little bit of a buffer between them and traffic. We have both of these plans are available on the city's website in a lot more detail. We plan to continually update the site as we continue to progress on both corridors. As modifications are made, I believe we're going to be, not only are we going to be continue to present to whoever wishes to hear from us directly, but we will also have all of these elements on your website. As I mentioned to you before, both of these plans have been completed. We're in the process of implementing many of the elements that were proposed, and we are in the process of taking a lot of these lessons that we've learned and applying them towards another corridor. The next corridor will be 15th. I believe it's going to be from I-4 all the way up to Lake. I'll have to check on that, but I believe it's a fairly large section of town. And the reason we did that was because there's a significant mix or a relevant mix of uses, all the way from residential down towards the south, towards more of a mixed use and commercial use towards the north. So we feel that it's a good representation of the types of corridors that we're going to bump into throughout the city. This 15th Street, for 15th Street, we've already been awarded our $50,000 grant from the state. We're in the process of finding a consultant that will do the work for what we'd like to get done. Ultimately, what we'd like to get done is not only get a few recommendations for design, but work on developing some code specific recommendations so that we can apply them throughout the city. We believe that this is going to take about 6 months, but we're well on our way. I'm pretty pleased with the progress on this. If you have any questions or concerns, I'm open right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Pardon? Yes.
I said thank you. I was just looking at 15th Street on my map here. But now, you know, I didn't think there was a lot of businesses along there, but there are. So anyway, do we have any comments about the presentation that Frank did?
Yeah, I had a question for Frank. This is Leland.
Okay.
So Frank, on the Bay to Bay, it wasn't too long ago that the city proposed to actually do the lane reassignment there, reduce the lanes. And there was a lot of opposition from the local community there to doing that. And it stayed the way it is now, which is the 4-lane undivided. Did you see the opposition when this plan was taken to the public, or has sentiments changed, or has the plan addressed some of those concerns from the public there to be able to move forward with some of the recommendations for the corridor? And that was one kind of question. And then the other one was, it seems like the challenge is getting the properties to redevelop there because there's not a lot of parking. And then there's hardly any room between the curb and the buildings. There's very narrow sidewalks. So you really need those parcels to redevelop to improve that condition, it seems like. Was that part of the plan? Are there incentives to get, spur some redevelopment and address the parking issues?
Yeah, well, let me address your first question. There hasn't been much of a change in the residents' approach towards I guess to say parking and those sorts of things. We are proposing a number of pilot programs just to see whether or not traffic calming elements can be put in place in certain sections, but we haven't come up with an entirely a proposal for the entire corridor, simply because there has been a lot of pushback, as you mentioned. But we are proposing a number of different pilot programs. Again, some of them will be specified, are already specified in the plan, and some are in the works. What we're hoping to do is to show that there are benefits. I mean, we've done it, we've tried it in other parts of town, but there, again, as you mentioned, there's a lot of pushback. So our concern is we've got to pick our battle. When we fight, when we don't want to fight a losing battle. So what I'm saying is we need to say to the residents, here are your options. If you did this, this could happen. If you did this, this could happen. So that's where the pilot programs are coming into play. I don't know if that's a sufficient answer for you, but we're aware of it, and we're trying to address it in small pieces.
Thanks, Frank.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And can you remind me what your second the essence of your second question was again?
Yeah, I guess the second part was just, are there incentives for redevelopment as part of this?
That's a more complicated issue. We haven't really set up an incentive program to address this. We are aware that particularly when it comes to the setbacks, we can't widen the sidewalk, so to speak, until we've addressed some of these setback issues. And a lot of the times, current property owners, they're concerned with it just as much as we are, but we're having issues when it comes to current code requirements. So we're working with code, with zoning, to help determine what can be changed and what can't be changed. That is a work in progress. We're well aware of the constraints, but again, all we put in the plan were proposals. We haven't been able to iron out a lot of those details yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I appreciated being part of the stakeholder team for both of these studies, these corridors. I was really excited about Main Street just because I think it has, even more opportunity to change, improve and enhance the current, not gentrification, but do a lot for the people that are already there and wanting a better neighborhood. But I really liked that the students had so many great ideas, and I think that's all on your website, if I'm correct. It's definitely worth looking at. It was Terrence Xavier's students that had really put together some really cool things. So that was fun, working with the students.
No, I really appreciate the work that the students put out. They came up with a lot of really solid recommendations, particularly for Main Street, in my opinion. Reusing the alleyways was key. Dealing with some of the safety concerns without being too much of an imposition. And one of the concerns, I mean, we all have the same concerns when it comes to development in underserved neighborhoods, is at some point we're concerned with that bad word, gentrification. We're concerned with it. I've been concerned with it since the very beginning. It becomes a housing issue. It becomes a service issue. It becomes a safety. I mean, there are probably half a dozen, if not a dozen, concerns that need to be addressed concurrently in order to really make the residents feel like not only are the proposed changes going to benefit the city, but more importantly, they're going to benefit the neighborhood. So it's a delicate balance, but we're well aware of the potential pitfalls.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Any other comments? Okay, all right, very good. So I appreciate that, and we will move on with the next item.
Thank you.
All right, the last status report is the storm evacuation and shelter in place study.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So I'm Allison Ye with the TPO staff and project manager for the study. Happy New Year to everyone. By the way, this is also a study that was recommended by the TPO's work program, otherwise known as the UPWP. So we began this effort last June with the goal of supporting the emergency evacuation in Hillsborough County, wanting to further increase the resilience of our transportation system. The study looks at best practices in evacuation planning, both nationally and regionally, and trying to focus on potential evacuation enhancement strategies that can be done without taking on more expensive capacity widening projects. We, of course, would never do this alone. Throughout the process, we have been engaging with planners from emergency management, the local mitigation strategy working group, HART, Sunshine Line, and the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, and utilizing statewide cell phone data, which is included in the study. Now I'd like to introduce our consultant lead, Cara Kasileski with Cambridge Systematics. She's going to report on some of the findings. We're hoping to get some feedback from all of you on that after we report the findings. So thank you. Karen, are you able to share your screen? You're on mute, I think, Karen. We're not seeing the screen or hearing you, I think. There you go.
Still can't hear you though, Karen.
There's no audio, Karen. Yeah.
Okay, she wants to call in.
Karen, you're self-muted. Can you unmute on the phone, please?
Actually hearing her just fine a little bit ago.
So.
Okay, now maybe that's not. I got unmuted.
There we go.
Yep, you're able to hear me now?
Yes.
All right, so thank you. Apologies for that. So as Allison said, I'm Karen Kasileski with Cambridge Systematics. We're happy to be helping out with this forecasting and sheltering in place project that the TPO is taking on. She talked to you a little bit about the public engagement, and I'm going to tell you some of what we have done so far, talk about the study issues that have come up from the public and from the stakeholders that have been involved, which may have included some of you, and then also look for some suggestions from you based on where we are at now in terms of issues and strategies. So our schedule is roughly this. We're slated to end in February, but with some presentations, we'll be pushing that out just to let you know. So where we are in the process very quickly is that we've done an online, tried to get some of the public involvement in terms of what issues are important of people when it comes to needing to evacuate primarily for a hurricane, but for other needs as well, should there be any. And so we held an open house, a virtual open house, got some information that way. We did an online survey, and then we have a couple other polls that we'll talk to you about. From that information, we wanted to identify the issues or topic areas that are important to people, and that's where we're at. I actually should start hashing the assessment. We pretty much have done the assessment and are starting into the strategy evaluation step next. So today, while we go through this, I'm hoping you all can help us. I'm going to show you some hotspot locations when it comes to evacuation. I want to see if you have those, if they make sense to you. Then also if there's any other strategies and any recommendations you might have. So just really quick, I mentioned the open house. We did some polling during that open house to understand between that and the survey, the when, where, why, how someone might evacuate. We learned from that obviously storm severity has a big part into whether people evacuate or if they evacuate and where they evacuate to. Also whether they had a place to stay and could remain with their family and pets and animals was also of importance. And then further down were some things like privacy and security. And then on the bottom, when it comes to whether they would evacuate, where they might evacuate to or when they might evacuate, cost was down there. That was on the open house. And then on the online survey, for each of these, we had 20 some odd results for each one. Same sort of results in terms of storm severity. That lack of information people really raised of where's it going to go, where's it going to come to, and should we leave now, should we leave later type of thing. The needs of pets, the needs of families, and then the security and privacy. That was getting at some of the ideas around whether people would go to shelters or not. And then the last part is some people had some issues with their job. And then you'll see if they evacuate had to do with cost and access to transportation as well. Excuse me a second. So because we had such a low survey and online response, we looked at a few other statewide surveys that were performed. Florida International University does an annual hurricane effect and cultural preparedness survey. And this is through their 2021. They look at whether people have access to information, and here the access has stayed pretty high. They look at whether they have a plan of action, which has dropped from about the 85 percentile to 75% of people do. The big takeaways here is that the year after a storm, people tend to get complacent, which we've heard about, and that's reflected in this information. The perception of vulnerability has hovered around 50%, so 50% of the people consider themselves vulnerable to hurricanes. And then the one that is a little disturbing. It's how many people would actually evacuate if ordered, and it's only about 30%. So it means 70% of the people would stay in their homes if actually there was an evacuation order. And I should mention that evacuation for hurricanes is tied to storm surge. It is not tied to wind. So these are homes that are anticipated to be impacted by flooding. The other survey that we managed to have was from the University of South Florida. They looked at the impact of evacuation and COVID, after COVID. So the study came out in 2021 based on 2020 data. They also indicated that people would tend to stay with family and friends versus trying to evacuate to long distance to the extent possible. Quite a few would try to stay home as well, assuming their homes were available to do that. Sorry. And then the big question here is the pre-COVID and post-COVID, whether people would go to a shelter or not. And it drops from about 55% to 35%. So over 20% of people said they would not go to a shelter during the hurricane period because the risk was, greater than sheltering in place. And I think some of the other behavioral impacts that we've noticed now is people, because of wind primarily, is my perspective, do want to evacuate during a hurricane. So the pie chart at the bottom shows how 80% of people would be very or somewhat likely to evacuate, which means a lot of people on the roads, not just from the Hillsborough area, but from other areas as well. So for to sum up the key results from the polling, the storm uncertainty impacts decisions. So obviously, having more information, more accurate information is always helpful. Traffic congestion was a main concern. You can see the word cloud to the left that was generated during the open house in terms of items we had not raised that people wanted us to look at. So we're looking at traffic congestion in particular. And then the importance of being able to stay with family and friends. And then access to transportation being important, the cost itself not seen as much of a problem. So we're looking at this from the items that the TPO can actually take action on. So that's why you'll see us talk about traffic congestion a little bit more. So based on that input, we came up with 5 areas that somewhat overlap in terms of the issues related to evacuation and sheltering, whether there's congestion during evacuations generated internally and from other parts of the Florida, evacuation operations, transit operations, communications, and then behaviors affecting evacuation and sheltering. And I already spoke about some of those. So I'm going to stay here for a second. This is one thing we did is we looked at congestion during evacuations, and we used application data, that cell phone data, HERE data, and speed data to let us identify hotspots during Hurricane Irma. And then we also used data from the 2045 long-range transportation plan. So there you'll see there's 10 each for arterial hotspots and 10 for freeway. And most of them may not be a surprise to you. The freeways are always up there. Some of the arterial may be different, may be a surprise. And I'll bring these up more closely so you can see them in more detail. This is the chart, which while I grab a drink of water, I'll let you peruse. So Bruce B. Downs is affected a lot, as is Dale Mabry. And then on the interstate side, obviously I-75 and I-4. This is the hot spots in the sort of the gold or bronze links again, but we've overlaid them with the evacuation zones, A through E, which roughly correlate to hurricane categories 1 through 5. And so you'll see that some of them are right on the edge of the evacuation zones in terms of eliminating, getting away. And then you'll see up in the university area where the hospitals are, There's quite a few, and then also towards some of the other hospitals and shelters. We're also very concerned about people that might have difficulties in evacuating, whether they don't have access to transportation or have limited means to evacuate, or don't have the social or cultural structure to be able to have that support to evacuate. And so we looked at this from an environmental justice perspective using the TPO's environmental justice layers and then the high disability layers to evaluate which of these areas might also be affected. So while the downtown Tampa area, central Tampa has a lot of areas with people with needs, there is not a lot of congestion with evacuation right there as well as right in that same location. Tends to be on the periphery. So we're going to be looking a little bit more further at these congestion hotspots and making some recommendations on how best to improve them. And that's where these congestion strategies and evacuation operation strategies come into play. The region, Hillsborough, is very fortunate to have reversible lanes, so you can take advantage of like the Selman Expressway, helping to move people away from the coastal areas. Emergency shoulder use is now the preferred mechanism for the interstates for Florida DOT instead of contraflow, and we'll be looking at the benefits of that as well. It was actually used in Irma and has been expanded since. Contraflow is very difficult to use just because of the personnel that's needed to close off all the entrances, and as well as we have responders and FEMA trying to move into the state at that point in time, and they have difficulty moving in. So that's part of the reason that contraflow is not used as often as you might think it would be. Of course, traffic signal coordination is another opportunity, particularly about maybe around these hot spots where we can do a little more event pre-planning and sending signal operations. You mentioned people have a lot of issues around messaging and signs, adding portable and fixed dynamic message signs that can be used to convey information, whether that helps with detour or where there's accidents so people know to avoid, or even some basic information like gas buddy, for example, to be able to find gas stations with fuel. And then we did think that there might need to be some strategic capacity improvements. And what I mean is not general, not large capacity improvements, but potentially some small improvements at intersections or something like that to be able to help. And then phased evacuation, starting to look at how to be able to get those clearance times down, to start to evacuate potentially visitors first, activating some of the early zones a little bit earlier than they might be normal. So those are the strategies that we are looking at on those names. And we'll be doing a little bit more sensitivity testing and clearance time testing to determine which of these kind of are most beneficial. Then we'd also want to shock transit operations. We've had good conversations with stakeholders about this. HART and the school district traditionally have helped during an evacuation. But there's still always seems to be room for improvement. We learn from every storm and hurricane, and so there's still some discussions about trying to keep, since they currently modify their routes. The thinking is to potentially just keep their same routes and supplement as needed. But that's still open for discussion. I'm not committing HART to that. I'm just saying that there's a lot of discussion still to be had on how transit operations during a storm can happen. Particularly because of some of the issues related to driver shortages that already exist for the school district. And then there's the event-related communications. This is primarily handled by emergency management personnel and the municipalities, the state, the county. But are there ways that a TPO could help? And so that there might be ways, like I mentioned, with the signs or for transportation for people that need a little bit of transportation assistance, kind of finding some opportunities there, or with fuel and services. The other issue is behaviors. I mentioned how some of the behaviors are changing in terms of people wanting to evacuate that don't need to, and the others that should be and that aren't. So that's the kind of the takeaway from here is trying to get. We have up to 25%, or a quarter of the people in an evacuation zone will not even evacuate for a Category 5 storm. So that's quite a few people potentially at risk. On the other hand, there are 10% of people that are going to evacuate no matter what, even if they, and I mean 10% of people that don't even live in any evacuation zone, they're going to evacuate for a Category 1, and that includes that excludes people that live in mobile homes. So there are a lot of people out and about and moving during preparations for hurricane. That with maybe some targeted and consistent messaging can help to get the right people to evacuate and people that do have safe homes to be able to stay. So with that, I just wanted to follow up again and see if there was any, if the hotspot locations made sense to you based on your everyday knowledge and or your experiences in past hurricanes and other strategies, or any suggestions for recommendations that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Karen, for that. So with that, we'll open it up for questions or comments from the committee.
The only thing, hey, this is Gina. The only thing I thought of is, I'm sure this tactic is used, I hope, but when we get those alerts, like Amber alerts, that as soon as our phones are working, it seems to me a really effective way to contact groups of people that something's, like they don't know what to do. So I'm sure that was considered, but like geofencing, kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Do a lot of people not know what to do?
I would say you have to assume they don't. That's been my experience. The question was, are people prepared? Many are, but a lot of people think they know, and then they haven't really made their plan, and then they think, and then they're suddenly panicking. So I think it's always a good idea to be able to push it out, and for those that need it. I agree with you. In our living here, we should know what to do, but there's a lot of people that don't. That's been
and then we have so many people that are moving here every day,
Yep.
right? So.
Go ahead, Alan.
I was just going to ask Gina. So right now the Amber alerts are go to everyone and they're not voluntary. But I think right now with evacuation and storm information, you have to opt in to get that information. So it sounds like to me you're thinking it should just be pushed to everyone's phones, like an Amber alert would be.
You're kind of got some static with you, Allison, so I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
I heard
Something less voluntary, more, an Amber alert you don't have a choice on.
something that's more voluntary.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, right now you have to opt in for certain storm information, opt in with the county and opt in with the city. But something like an Amber alert is, for everyone in a specific area. So just kind of confirming what Gina said.
Good.
Yeah, my community uses their code red system that way. So in hurricanes, if you've got a code red system.
Well, I think that's the key. I mean, my limited emergency management planning, it's mostly comes down to communication. And I think in the transportation realm, it's that aspect would be trying to get word out on what areas are functioning well and maybe ones that aren't, and maybe alter their plans to get out in the best way possible. So I don't necessarily know what the best way to communicate that is, but I think that's part of the evaluation. So how can we best get that information out? And that's probably something you consider.
interested in your thoughts on operational strategies. The other thing, Sharon, if you could go back to the hotspot map, we're really hoping to, do those hotspots you see make sense to you. And this is what the data analysis is showing, but maybe the one with evacuation zones. One more back, or two more slides. There you go. So as Karen said, it's sort of on the periphery of the evacuation routes, trying to get out to the main routes up north. And then along I-4, you see there's a cluster of that city.
Right. Okay. I mean, it's one of those things that I don't know how many. I mean, obviously the interstates would be the initial focal point. And eventually, that's where most everybody's going to look for, thinking that's the highest volume of active. So it sounds like you've already considered that. And you said it's over. I mean, I have initial reservations about it because of the debris that gets thrown there, and people are not used to that. But I think once it became the standard and the flow of traffic is there, people just understand, well, that's just another lane in an emergency situation. I'd be worried. I don't know the dynamics of when you get to an overpass and how that could be affected. As long as if the overpass didn't have an emergency lane, it would cause massive chaos. But I'm sure that's all part of when you consider opening up that lane, that you would look at those aspects.
Yeah, the DOT has a consent of the emergency shoulder use plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and they review them every year.
Okay, very good. That makes sense. So again, I'm going to put down for any other comments. One other comment for me, just to kind of switch gears a little bit, but you mentioned, and again, I don't know if it's part of your study, but one thing to consider is that we are increasing our EV usage of electric vehicles. And traditionally, I mean, I think Allison explained a little bit, the charging infrastructure is kind of a lag behind the ability to handle the volume as they've increased. So on an emergency scenario, of course, everybody's charging up before they leave the house, but could foresee. I know we're adding stations, and there's been some money coming into the state to try to get them on these primary corridors. But that's just one thing I think to just as, again, kind of a discussion topic to think about. They are becoming more popular for sure.
Thank you, Jeff. Actually, I've been thinking about that myself for system resilience. And the TPO is going to be doing their EV charging stations, study in this next fiscal year. So this is something I want to bring up for that study.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any other comments or any other areas, roadways that they wanted to identify? I mean,
we'll go ahead and post this presentation on the study website. And if you think of anything else, my contact information is there. You can just email me with those comments. So.
Okay, very good.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Cara.
Yep. Thank you.
Oh, so there's that's the last status report. It looks like we have one more new business item. So yes, Johnny Wong's on the line. He'd like to make an announcement.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Johnny Wong, TPO staff. Just have a quick couple updates for you that are relevant to the agencies. Many of you have already been contacted by DOT to have been informed that the window to submit applications to fund projects via the Transportation Alternative Program, Transportation Regional Incentive Grant Program, or TRIP, and the SU Surface Transportation Block Grant funds is currently open. It's been open since mid-December, and you can submit grants through a new website called the Black Cat Grants, otherwise known as the Grant Application Process, or GAP website. And you can log on to that website. I will send everyone information, and if you have an eligible project, there are a few different tabs on that page that you can click on and access the application forms that are relevant to your project, and then you submit it through that website as well. I believe that when you submit an application, the MPOs automatically emailed a copy of it for our records, but if you also wouldn't mind sending us a copy to let us know that your that you're planning to submit a project, that would be very helpful. Those applications have to be submitted to the DOT for it to begin reviewing the projects by March 6th. And we're asking that you inform us of your intention to submit an application by March 4th. So that's the big update for project funding for this year, is that there is a new website called Black Cat Grants where you submit the application forms and that the window's open. On a related note, if you all haven't received an email from either Vashaka, myself, or Doodle Poll, we've reached out to all the agency staffs asking them to identify some days and times that work for us to have our annual priority project review. You all know that we meet early each year and begin reviewing your priorities. We talk about projects that are already funded and can be removed from the priority list, and projects that are forthcoming that you're requesting for us to add to the priority list. We want to have those one-on-ones with each agency beginning in the 3rd week of January and hopefully wrapping up by the first few days of February. We have to keep a very tight deadline this year because the legislative session begins earlier in even years. And this being one of them, we need to get this priority list wrapped up a little bit quicker than we did last year. So if you all haven't clicked on the Doodle poll and submitted some times that work, please check your email. If you don't have anything, message me and I'll have Vashaka send you a reminder. And I think that's it for the update. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Johnny, I just wanted to let you know, I don't know if you can tell by the view in the room, but a lot of members had to go to other meetings, and this is really important for them to know about. It sounds to me like you said that you did, well, a lot of them here are ones that you are going to set up one-on-one meetings with, but for the new website, would they, maybe I can send it out to the TAC, you know, the link, or have you already done, like, are you reaching out on that topic as well, like that new grants page?
The purpose of me letting you all know at the committee meeting today is just as a second reminder. DOT informed us that they contacted each of the agencies already to let them know of the change. We just wanted to make sure that that happens. But yeah, I can certainly send a follow-up email reminder just as a third warning to everyone, or notification, I suppose. And hopefully, third time, we will have caught all the stakeholders and no one will be caught off guard.
Okay.
Please forgive all the mess in the background.
It looks like a father of two.
All right, anybody else have any comments on that? Okay, thanks, Johnny.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Is there any other old or new business that anyone would like to bring up? Okay, with that, I think we're ready to close the meeting. I believe the next meeting is on the 7th of February. You should see an announcement coming out prior, and we welcome everybody to participate. So with that, we will end the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. Most of everyone who left told me they had a conflict or they were going to have to leave. So as long as we got the action.
We're not holding up progress, that's for sure.
Sarah. We expect you at every meeting.
What was the take off? I'm just curious when we had the
Okay.
I don't know. You were sitting there. You were in the corner when they said, when there was the thing.
I got it.
I was dealing with the-
Bye, Jack. Bye, Tina.
Okay, bye, Barbara. Talk to you soon. It's Lisa. She, of course, like they just tend to be more chatty, but it was really not a good idea.